Well, hello. We are going to go ahead and get started. So if you don't know me, my name is Nicole. I'm a speech pathologist and a gender voice specialist and the founder of SF Speak, which is an online gender voice company. And this workshop is a part of a gender voice basics bootcamp that I'm doing for the month of August. So if you haven't already caught the other videos yet, I can talk about that a bit more at the end and link them in the chat if you want to check them out. But today's focus is going to be on manual tension relief. So the reason for it exactly is with gender modification of voice, we're doing a lot of moving around and engaging different parts of our vocal tract to alter the gender perception of the voice. And that effort can easily cross the line and cause some tension for some of us. So the reason we care about tension in the voice is essentially when the muscles around your voice box or your larynx get tight, even the muscles inside of your larynx get tight, they can dampen the voice. So if you think about like a bell ringing, if you were to put your hands around the bell, it would dampen the vibrations. So in the same way, your voice box is like a bell ringing. And if the muscles are tight around it, it not only dampens the vibrations, but decreases the mobility of moving around the larynx for voice modification. So when we release those muscles, it allows us to actually have a more resonant or free sound, as well as more flexibility and control of the movements of the structures. So you may or may not know that you can go to a speech language pathologist or a specialist to have like a full circumlaryngeal massage done for you. And while that's extremely important and useful, it's a little inaccessible right now. And if you're not having those type of deep tension issues, there's some gentle, simple techniques that you can use on yourself at home. And that is exactly what our special guest, Christine Schneider, is going to show us today. So Christine is a manual therapist and a manual laryngeal therapist and the owner of Lifelight Massage in New York. And she's going to walk us through how to relieve laryngeal tension and also some tension of like the jaw, neck, and shoulders. So I'm going to pin her now and mute myself. Give me a moment to find her in this chat. There we go.
Hello. Thanks, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Christine,
oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You. Wait, let's see. There's a whole bunch of people in here. There we go. Okay. Go for it.
Okay. Thanks so much, Nicole. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. Ooh, although sometimes the days get a little confusing right now. So thank you so much for being here. I do, just before we even start, I'll introduce myself again. My name is Christine Schneider. I am the owner of Lifelight Massage Therapy in New York City. I specialize in laryngeal and TMJ therapies. Can you spotlight Christine now? Nicole, is it possible to spotlight me?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, great, thank you.
If you're not seeing it spotlighted on your own computer, then switch to speaker mode. Whoever said that.
Okay, cool. Great. So, and then I also have an online company, which is The Visceral Voice, and that's my online company. So you can check that out too. A lot of stuff going on online. And I also have a podcast, a voice podcast, which is also the same name, The Visceral Voice. So you could check that out.
Hey, Christine, saying that they still see me. So hold on.
Okay.
Difficulties. It wouldn't be very helpful to watch me do this because that's not me. Huh. Yeah, unpin you. And then, oh, got it. Now can you all see her? Yay. Wonderful. There we go. Sorry about
that. Hi. Thank you for your patience, everyone. So when we're doing any kind of self-massage, I usually recommend to my clients that they hang out around between a 5 and a 6, which is the, oh, this feels so good, or a nice release. You don't have to go incredibly deep. And then it's also important in self-massage to just kind of melt into the tissue. We call it a melt. And that's where coming through the superficial tissues, or the tissues that are closer to the surface, and then sinking into the deeper layers. So it's just kind of a slow melt into the tissue. I do want to mention that during this time right now, we're learning more and more and more about COVID. If you are someone who has or has had COVID, then just back off a little bit, even a little bit more, just a little bit more superficial, a little more gentle. I can't even see everyone and I don't know your health histories, and you do. So if anything seems like it wouldn't be a good thing for you, no worries, then you don't have to do that particular self-massage or anything like that. But feel free to kind of join along. I'm just going to go over some very simple general techniques around the area that you can just add into your everyday or every other day practice. So I'm actually going to start with the shoulders. I want to start here because as you start doing self-massage, as you're up in here, sometimes people start elevating their shoulders up a little bit and then everything starts getting tense around here. So we want to make sure that we're not tensing up something else in order to relieve something. So we'll start at the shoulders. And once you know how to do that, you can always go back to that. So you can either just kind of hold here on the upper trap or on the shoulder. I like more kind of a thumb finger grip. So I'm going to do thumb in the front, fingers in the back, and I grip that muscle there. So I have the upper trap in my hand. And I'm going to do two techniques here. The first one is I'm actually going to, as I inhale, and then I'm going to exhale and look over my shoulder the same direction. And then coming back to center. So right now I'm actually releasing the upper trap. I do it again. So we'll do this about 6 to 8 times. Just holding that upper trap and rotating our head to the same side. Inhaling and exhaling as we look over. Inhale and exhale. We'll do one more here. Inhale and exhale. Now my thumb comes slightly more towards the center, just slightly. So if I was out here, I just come in a little bit more. And then I'm going to rotate my head to the other side. And I feel this muscle stretch right under my finger. So now my intention's on a muscle called levator scapula. And I exhale, looking over to the opposite side. Inhaling to come back. Exhaling. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. 2 more. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Then dropping that hand down and just take a moment to feel the side that you just worked compared to the other side. Do you notice, do you have any differences? Do you notice any differences? Any relief on that one side that you worked? You can pop it in the chat. Yes, yep, looser, much looser, cool, good. Feels looser for sure, much better, this. Much more relaxed, cool. Oh, stabbing yourself with your nail. I know, it is. You do have to have short nails with this. That is a really, really great point. And yeah, I have very, very short nails. So especially as we start getting up closer, up under here and up in here, we really want to make sure that our nails, you can use the pad of the finger as opposed to the tip. So if you have long nails and you love your long nails and you don't want to get rid of them, that's totally cool. Just try to use the pad of your finger as opposed to the tip of your finger. So going over to the other side. And then we turn to the same side as that muscle. And coming back to center. And inhale. Exhale as we look over. Inhale back to center. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Now coming to the other side. Just getting that grip again. And then rotating your head to the opposite side. Inhaling back to center. Opposite side. Inhaling back to center. Opposite side. Inhale. Exhale. One more. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale back to center and release, and then just feel the shoulders there. We have a comment, kind of, my muscles are kind of developed up there from punching bag use, laugh out loud. Totally. Actually, I work with a lot of people who do that kind of exercise. There are a lot of treatments that you can do that'll help release this. You could put a ball here and then angle into, I'm just going to show you real quick, putting a ball tennis ball, putting it on a wall, and then putting your shoulder into the tennis ball here. So you can get trigger points like that. There are so many different ways to get trigger points. There's also a cane, little tools, all my tools over here. There's also a little cane. This cane is awesome. And you can also get into those muscles with that cane if the tissue is so dense that it's hard to get into. So here's that too. There are canes. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's the shoulders. Now we're going to start working our way up. So we're going to start with the stretch. I do this in a few different ways. So today I'm just going to pick a way to do it. So I'm placing my hand right under my clavicles, right on my sternum, right on my breastbone. And then I'm placing the other hand right over it to create an additional tug on the tissue. Then I'm going to come back, looking up towards the ceiling, and then I'm going to jut my jaw and then release my jaw, jut my jaw, release my jaw, and come back down. So it'll look like this. So we come back, shut the jaw up towards the ceiling, release just the jaw, jut the jaw again, release just the jaw, and then come back. Head back, jaw up, jaw drops, jaw up, jaw drops, and back. Again, head comes back, jaw up, jaw drops, up, down, and returning the head one more time, coming back with the head, jaw up and down, one more time, up and down, and releasing the head. That's for the superficial muscle here, this platysma. There are many different ways to release that muscle, but that's kind of a nice stretch for it right up the center. I just had a huge storm come through. I'm in Pennsylvania. It is like, I'm sorry if you can hear it. I was like raining and pouring like crazy back here. Okay, cool. So that's platysma. Coming up, right up under here, the muscles of the suprahyoid and the tongue. So here we are, yeah, I know, fires in California and we are like crazy raining. Oh man, I'm so sorry. I used to live in Colorado and I was there during some of the fires, and smoke is just horrendous. Oh my gosh. Okay, so coming up right under the chin, doing some suprahyoid and tongue. So this is an area that when I talked about melting into the tissue, we want to do that here because there are many different layers and we want to get all the way to the tongue layer, that glossus level. So my mouth is open and my elbow is on a table right now. So if you can have your elbow on something, if I'm just here in midair, then I can't sink in as deep, and I'm also more likely to get my head in a poor posture. So I want to keep my head in a nice posture and nice alignment, and then I'm sinking in. My mouth is slightly open, so a little slackening of my actual mouth. And then I just sink. I just allow my head to just sink down into my thumb. And you can slowly start. So I was right up under, and then I can slowly just start to see if my thumb wants to glide down. So it's gliding down closer to the actual hyoid bone. I don't come too far back, maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, but I just allow it to do a little bit of a glide back toward the attachments on that hyoid bone. Now I take it a little out to the side. So I'm at a diagonal now. I'm actually following the muscle fibers here, which is why I'm coming diagonal. You don't have to know that, but that's why we're doing it that way. So I'm at a slight diagonal now. For those who like anatomy, we're on the anterior belly of the digastric. And I'm just hanging out and sinking in. If you've been diagnosed with anything like muscle tension dysphonia, you just sink in a little gently, because sometimes sinking in here, if you have MTD, really going in deep here might make the voicing, the phonation a little harder after treatment. So just a little gentler if you've been diagnosed with something like MTD. Now coming about 2/3 of the way back. So I'm still in front of the angle of the jaw, about 2/3 of the way back, sinking into that mylohyoid muscle. And since we're here transitioning into a jaw muscle, I'm going to change the way my throat or my hand is positioned and come right into the angle. And now I'm on a muscle of chewing, the medial pterygoid. Tickles in my throat. That, yes, tickles in your throat can happen. That is something that we mention in our therapeutic setting. If particularly digastric, if the digastric muscle gets tight and you start to work it, it can cause a tickle. Sometimes if you work the jaw first and then go back and work the suprahyoids of what we're working now, it can decrease that tickle. So sometimes it's better to just approach it in the jaw first and then approach it here. Okay, and then releasing that side and coming on the other side. So we've done one of our sides, and now we're going to do the other side. So we're sinking in slightly off center. This is a great one here, even if you want to work on it with speech, with your speech. If you're a singer and you use your voice and want to work on it with singing, just practice working with your voice. And if it's popping your thumb out, you know that you're having a lot of tongue tension there. And can you hold here without having that tension, that kind of punching you out against your finger? Can you do it without the tongue working so hard? Sinking in, and then I allow just a gentle glide back toward the hyoid bone, just a little bit, maybe 1/2 inch or so. Coming at a diagonal. You might notice that one side might be more tense than the other, or more tender than the other. My right side is more tender because of a whiplash injury I had in the direction of that. And about 2/3 of the way back. And then I'm changing the positioning of my hand, coming at the angle of the jaw there and sinking in at the angle of the jaw. And then releasing that and seeing how you feel. Yeah, have to remind yourself not to clench your jaw when you're doing that. So it's that reminder of keeping the mouth slightly slackened the whole time. If we have closed teeth, we're pushing the teeth up in and therefore the mandible up in and then it's compressing the joint. So, but if we slacken the mouth, keeping it a little open, then we don't have that clenching of the teeth and then the compression in the joint. Great. Okay. How's everyone doing? Cool. So we're going to come into masseter now, muscle of the jaw. So that's here. Now, if I interlace my fingers, I come right under my cheekbones. And same thing, my elbows are on the table. And if I lean my head into my thumbs and I clench my teeth, I want it to pop my fingers forward. Then I know I'm in the right place. So I feel that muscle contract and it pushes my fingers forward a little bit. So that's how I know I'm in the right place. Now I just sink in there and I'm gonna hang out and hold. My mouth is slightly open, same thing. So every technique I do, I keep my mouth slightly slackened. If you know that you have TMJ issues and you have neuralgia, if you've heard the term trigeminal neuralgia or anything that's more pins and needles, shooting, anything like that, then sometimes the work to the muscles can irritate that. So there are amazing things around the jaw, self-treatment around the jaw that you can do for any kind of nerve, neuralgia, etc. So if you do have that, then just pause on this because we don't want to irritate the nerve. Coming down a little bit, same muscle, just down further, same thing, it would pop me forward and I sink in there. And then you can start playing with opening and closing your mouth a little bit, really slowly, opening and closing and opening and closing. Open and close. And one more, open and close. So that's masseter here. Sometimes after working masseter, I like to just kind of do some circles of my ears. One way, the other way. You can even kind of alternate one and then the other. Remembering that knowing that the joint, that joint is actually right in that ear. So it's kind of nice to do some ear massage and ear circles there too. Okay, so just a very general work around the larynx. Nicole mentioned circumlaryngeal massage, and I do a little bit of circumlaryngeal massage, though my primary focus is laryngeal manipulation. And that's all very specific work, and we're not going to get into the very specific work, but what's cool with circumlaryngeal is that you can do it very gently with yourself. So I'm going to teach you that a little bit. The first thing I'm going to have you do, though, is actually just very gently find your pulse. So where's your pulse? Now, the first part of this is on the outside. We're working these muscles here. So if I turn my head, you see this muscle, sternocleidomastoid, it makes a V. So the first one, I'm working those. So my hand is wider, and I'm just doing gentle circles back and forward as I'm slowly gliding down. Again, I like to keep my mouth slightly slackened. So the first thing is we're on the outside of that pulse. Yes, I had you find the pulse to make sure that you don't push on the pulse. So right now, you know to be outside of it. You found your pulse here, so I'm not directly over the pulse, I'm outside. Now, next, we're gonna find the pulse again, and our next one will be inside of that pulse. So we are never directly over the pulse, ever. So now I'm more inside. And I'm just doing really gentle, small circles and coming down at the same time. And then we come one more in. So now I'm like really right on the midline. And I just do small little circles. And it's very, very gentle. Now, some people are just more prone to something called hyperemia, where you get red, where your tissue actually gets red. I'm not sure that you see any on me right now, but some people are just more prone to that. It doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you're working too deep, but really with any of that, just go super nice and gentle, a nice easy release there. Yeah, you could do these lying down, sure, absolutely. Okay, we are almost at time, but I would love, if everyone wants to, I would love to do maybe 1 or 2 intraoral if you want. I would give you time to wash your hands or grab gloves. And then we're gonna do a jaw intraoral and a tongue release intraoral, meaning we're gonna bring one finger inside the mouth.
Christine, could you talk for a second about the difference between circumlaryngeal and actual laryngeal manipulation?
Yeah, so circumlaryngeal, first of all, I do think that any kind of touch in the area, whether it's circumlaryngeal, myofascial, laryngeal manipulation, any of it, is just extremely beneficial. Touch in and of itself is beneficial. Myofascial and circumlaryngeal are more general. So even now there are circumlaryngeal techniques that are more specific, where I am specifically in the thyrohyoid space and I'm actually going around that hyoid trying to release the thyrohyoid space and all of the attachments on the hyoid. And my thought is more specific. And then but the main difference between circumlaryngeal myofascial versus laryngeal manipulation is actually probably the knowledge behind it. We are working specifically. So if I'm working the sling of the digastric, I'm specifically working the sling of the digastric. If I'm working the middle pharyngeal constrictor, I am specifically working the middle pharyngeal constrictor, or at least my intention is on that. Obviously, I'm going to have an effect on the areas around it. In circumlaryngeal and myofascial, you're just generally working with the tissue. Maybe sometimes you might have a specificity like the thyrohyoid space, especially with MTD. That's why we work the thyrohyoid space, because it's so greatly affected. But it doesn't really have the specificity that laryngeal manipulation has.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was for my geek brain. I'm like, I do a lot of one, not a lot of the other.
Okay, so I'm just gonna come in on the outside of my teeth. I'm coming back toward the ear on the outside of the teeth. There'll be this kind of pocket that your finger goes right into. So I'm on the outside, I come back toward my ear. I'm using the opposite hand. I'm using the opposite hand because this hand comes out, like up and out, while the outside hand rests and comes down and in. So what I'm actually doing is a very gentle release here, encouraging the mandible to release, encouraging all of that tissue to just release down in by having this configuration with my hands. I'm outside of the teeth. So I'm outside. I come back toward the ear. So I'm kind of coming diagonally back on the outside of the upper teeth. And really, if you feel a ledge there, if you feel the bone, and then come to the inside of the bone, you'll fall right into that tissue. And it's all on the outside. There are so many things we can do on the inside, but for this one, we want to hang out on the outside. And then we release and just kind of feel one side compared to the other before we move on. I can actually see mine, so that's cool. My left, it's like, nice and released. Okay, let's move on to the other side. So again, I'm on the outside of the teeth, angling back toward the ear. So this is right inside where my finger is on the bone. This is inside hand's coming up and out, and outside hand is just resting, coming down and in. Yeah, one side. It's so interesting with the jaw because it's common for one side to be what we call hypomobile, so decreased movement, and the other side to be increased movement. Now, a lot of times the complaint of someone would be where there's increased movement because it's kind of pulling out of the joint. But the compression, that tight side, is often on that that decreased movement. So you might want to chew on the other side. Sometimes that happens based on our chewing. So if we're chewing constantly on one side because of maybe some dental work or something, and then all of a sudden our jaw starts hurting, start noticing if you're chewing on one side or the other. Chew on the other side for a couple days and then start making sure you're chewing on both. Feels good. Anyone else? How's everyone doing? Cool. Do you want to do one more? Do we have time to one more, Nicole, or do you want to? One more? Okay.
Oh, yeah, we have, there's no time limit on it. So as long as you can grace us with your presence, you're welcome.
Okay, well, yeah, then let's do one more. So we came under the jaw doing those suprahyoids. Now we're gonna do a very similar thing, but we're gonna come inside and outside. So I call this my tongue hug. I really love this. This is like life-changing for my singing and my voice. So I come under the tongue with the inside hand, and then I'm coming up and under with the outside hand, whether with my thumb or with my fingers, it doesn't matter. But I come in, and basically I'm just gently hugging the tongue in between my fingers. I'm gonna give it a little hug.
Are you on top of your tongue or under your tongue?
Under.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna do the same thing that I did on the outside. The first one, my angle is going to be kind of straight back. So anatomy wise, it's that genioglossus, geniohyoid. Then I go at a slight diagonal and hug. Jess, how's your tickle now? A little better? Can you feel it with this one? Yeah. And then coming a little bit further back. Back to the diagonal. Kind of makes you gag a little bit. Back off a little bit if it's making you gag, or come out and then come back in. A lot of times once you release it a little bit, then that gag reflex, the body goes, oh, okay, wait, I don't need to do that. That's cool. So you can either back off a little bit or so just a little more gentle, or give it a break for a second and then come back in and try again. We'll go to the other side. So my pressure is not intense here. It's actually really, really gentle. I really am thinking of just hugging. It's like a very gentle hug. Oh yeah, that diagonal and then back a little bit. Back to the diagonal. And then straight out. For me, then once I actually go to use my voice, I'm like, what? So much better. But that's, you learn those things if you say something, like say a phrase and then do the technique and then say the phrase again. Sometimes that's easier to tell what the difference is.
If
Yeah.
you have a moment, could you talk about the effect of tongue and jaw tension on the voice?
Yeah. So it's all connected. We have something that we call the stomatic-gnathic system, which are all of these aspects together. So muscles of chewing, muscles of swallowing, the teeth, all of these aspects, the cranium, all of this coming into play together. So it all affects one another. The tongue is literally connected to the hyoid bone, and that's where it attaches. That's where the muscles attach. And then suprahyoids are attaching right into the jaw. There are muscles from the hyoid bone connecting up into the styloid process of the temporal bone, into the mastoid process of the temporal bone. So the fact that all of this is really, really related. And then another aspect is our posture. That's why anytime you go in to see anyone, they'll say, well, posture, posture, posture. Why? Because if I'm here, which I mean, we all are right now. We're hanging out on our computers, on our phones, watching TV. How can we not right now? And our posture is just kind of sinking down and in. Well, what's happening is it's compressing back here, which has a whole lot of other things happening with the nervous system and the vascular system, et cetera. But it's also preloading all of this musculature around the larynx. So we're asking it to hold up our head when it is not designed to hold up our head. Where if we actually come into proper alignment, the musculature, our skeleton is actually kind of holding us up. The proper musculature is also holding us up. And then that musculature is free to have its range of motion to assist with phonation and resonance. So super, super important, really, really connected. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Sean. Brian Gick has some really cool work on the way vocal tract structures interact in speech. Yeah.
Well,
Great.
thank you 1,000 times for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
If somebody wants to do a little bit more of this in a targeted way or has specific concerns, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, thank you. I actually have a virtual self-care membership coming out on this coming Wednesday. We get way more specific. There are hundreds of different self-massages, stretches, techniques. And so that comes out next Wednesday. And I also have I do like one-offs occasionally and events of other master teachers and etc. And so that's all at www.thevisceralvoice.com. And then I also have my Lifelight, www.lifelightmassage.com, and my contact information is on either one of those. They go to different places depending. So, and you can email me directly at thevisceralvoice@gmail.com. If you have any questions, I am more than happy to get back to you and answer those. And if you want to just kind of listen, if you want to geek out and listen to a bunch of stuff, my podcast is free, and that's the Visceral Voice. So feel free to just listen to whatever you want on that podcast too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I can answer the question about voice voice deepening.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Great. Amazing. Thank you all so much. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. Nicole, thanks for having me. It's always so good to see you.
You as well. Bye, Christine.
Bye.
Everybody else, I can stick around for a few moments if you have questions specifically about the use of this for gender voice work or how we integrate it. And as I mentioned, the workshop itself is a part of the Gender Voice Basics Bootcamp that I was doing for the month of August. So the idea behind the bootcamp was basically I did a poll where I asked where people were at in their like voice work, and over 90% of people said that they had no idea where to start. Let me actually, now I'm talking and Christine is the one spotlighted.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so I did a poll, like over 90% of people said they had no idea where to start. So there's a series of 3 more videos where I discuss like the basic steps to voicing, the most gendering characteristic of a voice, common pitfalls when starting out. And so if you want to check those out, I can like throw them in the chat as well. And then there's like a private Facebook group that has 600 people in it where I do weekly gender voice tips. There's a subreddit with the same info if you're not into Facebook. And then I put it on YouTube in case you don't like social media at all. So if anybody has a question, feel free to unmute yourself or pop it in the chat and I can talk for a few minutes before we all go back about our Saturdays. Somebody had asked, you have to scroll up. If you want to work on deepening your voice, are you skilled in the area? Most definitely, yeah. So I just work with oh, you can't unmute. Let me allow you, hold on. I just work with all gender voice. So it can be brightening, darkening, higher, lower, whatever you're looking for there. Allowed to unmute yourselves. You're allowed to unmute yourselves if you wish to ask a question.
Where would we find all that great information on Facebook and Reddit? You get it yourself.
We can't hear you.
Shit, sorry. In the chat, I put the Facebook group, Reddit, YouTube, and my website. I figured those are the easiest ways to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. That's like all the free content. And then if you're interested in actually like doing, I don't want to like, this is a free workshop. I'm not trying to just like plug everything that I'm doing, but feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about how to work more strategically or quicker.
Oh.
All right.
Definitely.
So on your Reddit, is that where I can find places to like help deepen my voice, or?
So the Reddit is, yeah, so I do like weekly gender voice tips. I think what has been done so far, right now it's in the Gender Basics Bootcamp, but so I'm launching in September, like a comprehensive online membership program, if you will. It's so that would probably be the easiest way to, if you haven't done a lot of voice work before, to start out. I do work one-on-one with people. It's a smaller caseload. I have a few openings left for the fall. So if that's something that you're interested in talking about, feel free. If you go to my website, you can book a consult with me, like a free chat, just to, honestly, if you don't know where to start, you're welcome to book one of those just to talk about it, even if you're not interested in doing one-on-one quite yet. And I can point you to like the best resources, because I know there's a lot out there. Yeah. Or you can message me on Facebook, or you can ask me right now on Saturday.
Can I just ask a quick question? Obviously, my dialect's going to be quite different to yours. Is that likely to be a big impact or a big problem if I did speak to you about something, or is it something that's generally quite generalizable?
I work with quite a few people in the UK. I work with people from a lot of different countries. As long as you speak English, we're good. A lot of the manipulation comes from like vocal tract, like resonance work. And whenever we get to things that may be impacted by dialect, so there's the gender voice is like my like main, it is my focus for the last few years, but I'm, as a speech language pathologist, I worked in accent modification before moving into gender voice. So I'm aware of the different vowel modifications and how to work within your accent and not getting rid of it.
And this may be something that may be more specific than for this, but do you have any experience with ME/CFS, which causes a lot of sore throat and a lot of lost voice for things? To me, do you have any experience in that sort of thing, which is a big problem for me?
Yeah, so say the acronym again. I don't know if I've heard
ME/CFS.
MEC.
Myalgic encephalomyelitis / chronic fatigue syndrome, I think is the full breakdown.
I've worked a lot with like reflux laryngitis, and if it's not reflux related, it's more tension related.
Reflux is one of the symptoms of it, so there is some element of that, but it's not necessarily just that, I don't think, from what I've managed to work out. But it's not something that I think, it's somewhat specialist that I'm not quite sure I found someone who has any experience with it. But it is something that it would be useful if there was someone who did have experience to add to other general, more related gender voice things, if that's related.
Of course, within the scope of my practice, within my scope of practice professionally. So I got into gender voice by working at a hospital in the city in San Francisco. And so I worked first with voice rehabilitation. So I've worked with a lot of like traumatic brain injury, stroke, neurological difficulties that cause voice disorders. And then on top of that, like swallowing, dysphagia disorders. And then from that, a lot of like muscle tension dysphonia, which Christine was talking about, as well as like reflux laryngitis. So if it's from here to here, I gotcha. If we go into the esophagus, then I would probably, I know how to adequately refer to like ear, nose, and throat or specialists for those areas. It sounds like if you have a diagnosis, you probably already are aware of who to talk to for them. But yes, I'm confident that I could at least tell you when we've crossed the line of being outside of speech pathology or gender voice work and need a different referral, or how to work within the constraints.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, the problem I have is the fact that I have been on hormones for more than 2 years. So if people look at me, they can easily gender me correctly. But on the phone, I always get misgendered and I don't like it. So in fact, yeah. I want my voice actually to be hyper feminine, not just this androgynous, but I want it to be like hyper feminine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty common. That voice is an area of valuable modification when it comes to not that it's like, it's not necessary for everybody. But the way that I work within gender voice isn't necessarily on like a heteronormative cisgendered like binary spectrum of like feminine, masculine. It's more of, we're going to isolate the different pieces of your voice, all the ones that end up leading to like brighter or darker or higher or lower qualities. And then within each of those pieces, we're going to find where do you authentically lie, and then strategically build those things together to create like your voice. So if your voice choice is, that rhymes, hyper feminine, of course we can do that within the constraints of like what physiologically we can all attain. But there's definitely, yeah, it's not an unattainable goal. Here's one here. Is there any tips on helping getting over the hump of embarrassment? I'm having a hard time having other people hear me even practice. I'd say that's super common as well. I mean, there are ways for sure. Like I always say, practice in the shower because it's loud and everybody sings in the shower. With COVID, it's a little bit harder. Some of my strategies around that initially were like, while you're driving down the road, read the road signs. If you're by yourself, like read all of your text messages out loud, your emails out loud, whatever it is, just to give you opportunities to practice speaking and practice what it is that you're manipulating or modifying. But there's definitely non-speech exercises you can do that don't trigger the voice dysphoria in a way that it sounds like speech. And then I usually recommend, if you're doing any manipulation and you're feeling a little bit nervous about presenting in a different register than you're typically speaking in, to start on filler words like yeah, or because then they can sound however you want, and it's a good like foot in the door for getting comfortable modifying something and also bringing your awareness to it while you're actually speaking. And then from there, you can identify like maybe a phrase or two, like an everyday phrase that you're used to using, where you practice moving into a different register. And instead of just jumping to it, whether that's higher or lower, kind of gliding into it. So if this is where I was speaking, then I just kind of go up a little bit and then come back down. Or if this is where I was speaking, I'd maybe go down and then come up a little. So just making gradual steps into it, and at all times kind of checking your own comfort level there.